Now let's talk about the various components that you're going to need for a Raspberry Pi. For those who are beginners to Raspberry Pi, this would be a discussion on everything you need to get your Pi up and running, and for those experienced veterans, you can feel free to skip ahead for this lesson. So first, of course, we're going to need a Raspberry Pi itself. I am using the Raspberry Pi 3 here, but of course you can use any version of the Raspberry Pi that you may have available. Next, you also need a power supply. So this is a 5-volt power supply with an adapter that you plug into your Raspberry Pi. That's needed to provide the power needed for the Pi to operate. You'll also need an HDMI cable, and this can connect to a monitor and will enable you to see the output of the Raspberry Pi on a screen. Alternatively, if you don't have an HDMI monitor, another option is an HDMI to VGA cable. So this end can connect directly into the Raspberry Pi, whereas the other end, as you can see, is a VGA connection, and this can connect to your VGA monitor. So this is a handy component if you don't have an HDMI monitor, and I'll put a link to this in the resources for the video. Next up, we are going to need an SD card, and of course we have to flash this first and prepare it with the operating system for our Pi. In order to access the SD card, we're also going to need some type of SD card reader. So a couple of options. You have this SD card adapter that you could insert your SD card in here and then insert this into your laptop or PC to access the SD card. Or an alternative version is this USB fob, where you can insert your SD card into here and then insert this into a USB slot to access the SD card. Next, you'll need a USB keyboard and a mouse. As you can see here, I have a keyboard and a mouse that's combined in one, and it is wireless and works via a USB connection. So I just need to plug this into my Raspberry Pi, and by just using one USB port, I'm able to have both the keyboard and the mouse. Alternatively, if you have a separate USB keyboard and mouse, that would work fine as well. So there you have it. That's all you need for your Raspberry Pi. And of course, in addition to this, you would need a monitor that you would connect the Raspberry Pi to in order to display output. But those are all the components that you'll need to get your system up and running.